As the Swedish rock band Europe, of course, as you know, sang time and time again, it is the final countdown. In fewer than 24 hours, most American voters will cast ballots for whom they want to be the next president of the United States. Now, in the past several days, polls have tightened in battleground states. However, in the latest CBS News survey, it shows this, that a majority of likely voters believe Hillary Clinton will win the election. 55%, in fact, say they expect that, while 31% say they believe Donald Trump will be victorious. To discuss it all, I do want to bring in CBS News Elections Director Anthony Salvanto with a look at perhaps near final electoral college math. But Anthony, before we get to the map, I just want to ask you about those numbers we just saw. 55% believe Hillary Clinton wins, just 31% say the same of Donald Trump. What does that suggest to you about what we will see, especially as the majority of Americans go to the polls tomorrow?
You know, normally you might think, well, if people don't think their candidate is expected to win, they might not show up. That's not the case for Donald Trump's voters. He's actually got the enthusiasm gap on his side. His voters say they're coming out to the polls. His voters are enthusiastic. And so we expect strong turnout from people who support him. I think the key for both sides is in these states that haven't already voted, you go to places like Pennsylvania, like Michigan, places where the early vote isn't all in the bank, that's going to be pretty decisive, and we're going to start taking a look at that pretty early in the evening, Josh.
All right, so we're looking for paths to 270. For Hillary Clinton, there perhaps are more. So let's begin with Donald Trump. How does it look at this point for him?
Well, he's got to win more states that aren't currently leading his way. I mean, that's a fact of the Electoral College math right now. There are just more states that are reliably Democratic. So any Democratic candidate starts in an advantaged position just for that reason alone. Now, having said that, Donald Trump's path then requires him to go flip a couple of those states. Let me show you how that works out. Right now, let's go east to west. Let's start with, say, Pennsylvania. And those polls will close at 8 o'clock. We'll get some vote count shortly thereafter. If that is going to Hillary Clinton, and polls indicate it could, then if she holds on to all the other battleground states that are leaning her way, you know, that could put her on her way. Now, if somehow she doesn't get Pennsylvania, that keeps her under 270. And then you look at Donald Trump. How does he come back in all this? Well, watch to see if he can, say, win Florida, where it's been even. Watch if he can win Ohio, where he's up by maybe a point. Then he's got a tougher road, but maybe he could get North Carolina, and then he starts to take a lead there. So that's what you're going to see early in the night. And if that starts to shape up, then we head out west and we see what happens.
And as we head out west, I do want to ask you about Nevada, where almost 80% of voters have already gone to the polls. John Ralston, very respected political reporter, says that the tea leaves to be read there suggest that things have gone very well for Hillary Clinton. And they also speak to an increasingly vocal majority, perhaps silent in election cycles past, as the Latino vote has really been seen there surging on behalf of the Democratic nominee. What to make then of what we're seeing out west there in Nevada?
That is exactly right. Watch. Here's a map that you could imagine happening if you get strong support from Latino voters. Maybe even if Donald Trump still wins Florida, you go out west and Hillary Clinton, if she can hang on to leads in Colorado and exactly, as you mentioned, in Nevada, then she's over the top, even if she loses Florida and Ohio and even North Carolina. You could throw that in the mix as well. If she gets that, then she gets even further over the top. But that Hispanic vote there, if between that, Josh, and I think women, if you see a large gender gap nationwide, that would help offset where Hillary Clinton is going to be down with men. If you see those things, strong Latino vote and a big gender gap, that would probably indicate a good night for Hillary Clinton.
So then as we look ahead to tomorrow and what we could be looking for, our Major Garrett is reporting today that all eyes in the Trump campaign headquarters will be focused squarely outside of the big battleground states on the state of New Hampshire. Could be a bellwether?
Well, I would say that even though it has only 4 electoral votes, one of the things you look for in the states in the East that close a little earlier, New Hampshire at 8 o'clock, is that if Donald Trump is doing well with the kind of voters who've been supporting him in the polls so far, working class white voters, older voters, definitely more for Donald Trump. If you see that and you see that in places like New Hampshire, then it's not so much for the electoral math, but people might read that as an indicator of what's to come. But the larger path then for Donald Trump is, even if he were to go and swing a state like New Hampshire into his column, then he would still have to go, and maybe he's going to try to swing a Michigan or Wisconsin, a much harder road to do. But if he were to do that, then he sort of cracks what people call the blue wall, those states that always vote Democratic. And if he has that path through the upper Midwest with those kinds of voters, that's how you'll know, and that might be the first place that you see it, Josh.
CBS News Elections Director Anthony Salvanto, as always, but certainly today. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, man.